Good morning again. I'm so pleased that you've all come here on this annual meeting Sunday. The canons and the bylaws call for an annual State of the Church address to be given by the rector. And with this address, we mark the 255th year of St. Mark's Church. I can't call it St. Mark's Episcopal Church because, as you know, it began as St. Mark's Anglican Church. We predate the Episcopal Church proper. And I do not want to say that we are 255 years old, because who knows what time will look like, and somebody may in time look back on us as the early church. So what I want to say is that we are 255 years young, and that we as a congregation are getting younger. We see this based on some days. Our nursery has as many as 21 kids who are 3 and under. So we have an incredible passel of little kids and little ones that we're raising up in the Spirit. But it is a very important and a very good mindset for us to think of ourselves as young and to think of ourselves as the early church, for we are living in the midst of a great reformation of all religions in the world. And for us as Christians, we are living in the midst of a new missional age. The old church that so many of us grew up in is mightily disruptive. I mean, think back to the churches of your youth, and I'll just say, things ain't what they used to be, right? Going to church is not a given in our culture amongst Christians. So, we are in an amazing moment of recreativity that is happening in the power of the Spirit here across the world. I love the description of the church as the Jesus movement. It is very biblical, very New Testament, and very presiding bishop, right? So Michael Curry, our outrageously incredible, charismatic presiding bishop, speaks of the Episcopal Church as the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement. And I think that's such an apt description. So that makes us the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement in New Canaan, Connecticut. And if there was one thing I want you to take away from my annual address, it is this: that the Jesus movement is on the move in this new missional age in New Canaan, Connecticut, in this parish. We are on the move. Now, it may say St. Mark's on our sign out there, but we are a Jesus community, right? Jesus is caught and taught in our midst. His Spirit is our spiritual treasure. The fact that you can come in the door and feel the Spirit of Jesus, that is something to be guarded and to be grown, and then, like the seeds in the parable of the sower, to be flung out into the world, right? We preach and teach the way of love to a world that is unbelievably broken and so often unloving. I hope you know that taken together, our church is a holy energy center, H-O-L-Y, right? For the people of our congregation, for our community of New Canaan and the communities surround that, for the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, and for all those that we can never see or know that are touched by our outreach ministries, right? So as a community, we are on the move, and we are striving, and we are thriving. We are blessed with so many graces. We have about a $2.1 million ministry budget. We have, at last count, about 51 active ministries. We have many acres and several buildings that are dedicated to the service of our Lord. We have 2 sacred burial grounds to bury our dead. We have a full-time staff, and we have an outrageous Mayfair, and we have an outreach budget that spends money not just on ourselves. And all of that brings with it many, many challenges. So if you think about the Jesus movement, the thing that we need to always understand is that Jesus is the prime mover of the Jesus movement, right? The living Christ is the one who moves our hearts and our souls and who moves our community. I know many of you very well, and others I don't know as well. And many times people will share with me stories of Jesus moving in their souls that if they could be known by all, you would realize that Jesus is real and alive. And all of these interior Jesus movements, when they are taken together, creates the Jesus movement that is a part of our life together. But one thing that people who say that they're spiritual and not religious, who are not members of religious communities, can never ever know that we as individuals could never ever do alone what we can do together. It's unbelievable. I mean, from the gospel to the gospel garden, from the incredible thriving preschool we have with toddlers, all the way to people walking in Jesus' footsteps in the Holy Land, the church is an incredible spiritual force for Christ in the world. Now, I see Jesus moving us to fulfill our mission to go and make disciples. So for the first time since I've been here, if you take the number of members that we have, which, by the way, we count them as relatively flat, but by the time you add in all of the new people pouring in our doors, whose names that we know, when you add those two together, these are people that we care for. We're in the 1600s, so 1626 to be exact, and that's up several hundred from the years gone by. Over time, the church has steadily grown, and it's a beautiful thing. This is not a no-brainer, right? We live in Connecticut. Connecticut is the 47th least religious state in the Union. We're only passed by Vermont. Also, in addition, right, St. Mark's had more baptisms last year than any other Episcopal church in Connecticut. Now, Jesus moving us to lead and live a deeper life in Christ. Remember last year we launched the Spiritual Vitality Initiative? It had two goals. The first one was that everybody who walks through these doors, all of you, including me, would experience spiritual growth. That people would experience the living touch of Christ and grow more deeply in that relationship. That was goal one. And goal two is that we as a community would extend our boundaries so that our spiritual vitality, the spiritual vitality that Christ has within us, can be shared more broadly in the world. You may remember we did two things, right? 220 of you took an online survey about your spiritual life, and then about 110 of you met in spiritual vitality house churches in Lent. We got two different answers, a kind of diptych that had a certain commonality and a certain difference. So the Renewal Works people from the inventory sent us back this big report, and it said on the front, "You are engulfed in complacency." I was like, are you kidding? We paid money for this? Said that we were engulfed in complacency. It said we were strong on faith in action, we loved our church, but we were weak on personal spiritual disciplines. And so they recommended that we emphasize personal spiritual disciplines and, in particular, the reading of the Bible. Diptych side one. The other side of the diptych was the 110 people who were in the house churches. And that was a very different picture. That was unleashed spiritual hunger. I thought one of the older members of the parish was going to punch me walking down the hall one day because we didn't offer enough opportunities for prayer. Those house churches said, we want more spiritual disciplines, more spiritual growth, more Bible, more prayer, more getting together in small groups, more retreats, more Lenten house gatherings. So, I see Jesus moving in both the spiritual complacency and in the spiritual hunger. You may remember from reading the book of Revelation that it begins with the ascended Christ writing letters to the 7 churches in Asia Minor. In these letters to these communities, he often praises them for their works, and he often also reproves them for their spiritual complacency. He says at the end of the letters, in the last letter, "I reprove and discipline those whom I love. Listen, I am standing at the door knocking. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come into you and eat with you, and you with me." That's it. That's what we're trying to do. We are trying to open the door to Jesus who is knocking for our parish and for everybody who comes in our doors, right? And that is why we have this year dedicated to the way of love, spiritual practices for a Jesus-centered life. In the fall, we taught those spiritual practices. We added daily morning prayer here during the week at 8:30 in the mornings. We had the call to the Bible in 2019, the reading of Romans during Epiphany. We added Brown Bag and Bible on Thursday at noon. And then coming on February 6th, the first kickoff of an evening Bible study for 7:30 in the library. All this in addition to God, Grace, and Gumption and Monday morning musings. But you can see we're trying to respond, position ourselves to meet this need. Spiritual complacency is our great challenge, and spiritual growth is our great opportunity. We will continue to have spiritual growth as our North Star that we are going to walk toward. We're still going to move our congregation in that direction, and to that end, we're going to start a spiritual formation commission in the new year to keep us moving toward that, so that together we all grow in Christ. Now, I also see Jesus calling us into a more holy communion with one another, right? The new commandment, the only commandment that Jesus gives us is, love one another as I have loved you. By this, they will know that you are my disciples. So this love for one another is the spiritual treasure of our congregation, right? It's an amazing thing. And can you tell me anything else the world needs more than communities of love in Jesus, right? This love draws us together and it sends us out. I see Jesus sending us out the doors for a greater love in the world. As Bishop Ian, who was here on December 2nd, would say, we are following Jesus out into the neighborhood to see what God is up to. This new missional movement has us partnering with more and more and more organizations. We partner with churches. So for instance, Laundry Love, I hope some of you saw my video about what an inspiring ministry this is. We joined with other parishes in the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, and monthly we help people do laundry who cannot afford to do their laundry. Now, this is an idea that came from us because we as a parish had the money to invest in our staff's continual educational development, and my assistant, Beth Ralston, went to a Missional Voices conference and brought the idea back, and several in our parish gathered around it and built it out, and now it's a thing. We invited all these others to partner with us. The number of partnerships that we have is beyond description. All the work that the wonderful Outreach Commission does, the Hands and Feet, the Samaritan Ministries, all the work that Syra and the youth group does with mission trips in the Gospel Garden. This is just simply too much to talk about, but I want you to know it is myriad and it is awesome. So I see Jesus moving in our staff also. As you remember, Pastor Martha moved on to be with her family, and Pastor Martha, if you're streaming, which she sometimes does, good morning, and we send you our blessings. Last year, we received 2 unasked for, unbidden, $150,000 gifts to empower us as a congregation to step out in faith and to properly staff the church with 3 full-time clergy. Now tell me that is not a movement of Jesus, right? Unasked for. And we are blessed that Elizabeth was moved to move here with her son Charlie and to bring her gifts for ministry. I knew she was the one long before she did. On the first phone call, I hung up and I said, there it is. I took the big pile of resumes and put them over some other spot. Got them off my desk. And I looked far and wide for these clergy, I have to tell you. And the resume stack was this high. And then one day, Justin walked in my office. He said, hey, boss, you got a minute? I said, yeah, sure. He says, I got an idea. I said, yeah? He said, I'd like to apply for the full-time position. So Justin coming on as a priest and theologian and resident, that was a Jesus moment for me, right? Beautiful. We have 2 great clergy seated over there, and it will make a categorical difference to the life of the congregation that we have 3 full-time clergy. The benefits will multiply over time as you see all of these ministries receiving the attention they need to be fully empowered. A word about music. It was difficult for many of us to say goodbye to B.P. Thomas, our longtime choir master and organist and friend. And I ask that you pray for B.P. as his life continues to unfold. But out of that came 3 gifted musicians. We have Art Shogren, the Pros Pro, as our interim choir master, Virginia Lehman playing on the keys behind the curtain, and Michelle McBride, our interim director of children's ministries. They have become a part of us, But now on February 10th, I hope you'll come because we're going to say thank you and goodbye to them. And I know that many of you read the letter that I sent about the call of Ned Tipton to be our new director of music ministry. That was a Jesus movement. I have to tell you, as you heard, we were done. We weren't looking for any more candidates, and he literally walked in our door. And I can tell you that Ned is so excited to come here and to be with us. And I know all of us who have met him are excited to have him. He's going to bring so much holy energy. His first Sunday is February 17th. And I want to thank the search committee and the choir who worked incredibly hard in this whole call process. They did a huge service to all of us. I also would like you to know that in the coming year, Francis, the Pastoral Pup, is going to launch into ministry. I am completely dumbfounded by Francis, the Pastoral Pup. You know, somebody said to me, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I am not kidding you." Because we accept the ministry of comfort dogs and hospice and in hospitals and in all these care places. And in the year dedicated to St. Francis, which was last year, we had a kind of light bulb that said, duh. Francis, these animals are part of God's creature. They're bred to care for God's people. And in comes Francis. Francis in the coming year is going to have an incredible ministry before her. I also want you to know that you have serving you an incredibly skilled church staff. These are vocational professionals who are deeply devoted to you, and they are very skilled and devoted to the mission and ministry of the church. Taken together, we are mightily blessed. And I also want you to know that we are mightily blessed by the lay leadership of the congregation. It is shocking to me that there are so many devoted and gifted and smart and hardworking and fun and humble and graceful people to lead. It's just amazing. We're going to say thank you and goodbye to some of those vestry members and to Dean Davis as our senior warden and welcome a new crew. The only problem with this Sunday is that not everybody can be elected to the vestry because there is some sort of shame and all that it can't be. But the human capital of our congregation mobilized for God is awesome. So is the financial capital that we have mobilized for God. That too is awesome. So for the first time, we have a ministry budget that is over $2 million, and that is something to be celebrated. That gives you some sense of the scope and the size and the impact of the ministry in the world here. And the money that we spend is nickels compared to the impact of the ministry that we have. And Kathleen Corbett, our treasurer, is going to give an overview of our financial strength and health at the annual meeting, and I hope you'll come and listen to that. I also want to say a word about our stewardship, right? I see Jesus moving in people and their money. So many of you make love the aim of your checkbook. It is unbelievably moving to witness that. For the first time, we are over $1.5 million in pledges, and there's still many pledges to come in. And I want to thank you all for that because it makes a gigantic difference to our life together. I want to flag two things here. One is that so many of you have raised your pledges in a movement of the Spirit, and we are really, really grateful. And I also want to say and pick out that one family has made a particular pledge, a $100,000 pledge to the church. And I want to say that pledges like that and pledges like everybody who increases their pledge, these are investments in who we are as a community in Christ, and they are very, very empowering. And I want that family that wishes to remain quiet to know how thankful we are for their investment in the ministry of Jesus. I have to tell you that money gives us freedom. Money gives us the ability to be generous, to be gracious. Money gives us the ability to be Jesus for people. We pay for people's heat when they cannot afford heat. We pay for food when they cannot afford food. We offer services to people who cannot afford to pay them. But we do that because we have the money to do it. It really makes a huge difference in our life together. And Rick Pivorato and Suzanne Harrison and Steve Lamoureux are also going to talk about that at the annual meeting. Now I want to say a word about the Empower the Parish campaign, which began in 2014. And again, I witnessed donors giving their hard-earned money to the glory of God, and that was crazy moving. The payment period for that campaign, a 4-year payment period, 2014 to 2018 officially ended in December, but man, do I love it that money is still coming in. And we're going to send you a final report on all this when we come to closure. The campaign achieved many, many of its gifts. We raised more money in this campaign than we had in a generation of St. Mark's campaigns. We purchased a rectory, thank you very much. We renovated the vicarage. We put more money in the endowment so that we will have perpetual empowerment of the ministry. We launched our digital ministry, and we repaired and restored and refurbished many things on the campus, most of which you can't see, but are vital to the running of our buildings. But there was one thing we did not do. We had hoped to build a center for ministry out on the front lawn, in addition to house our offices, right? The Ministry of Administration, to build out more meeting space, because we don't really have enough space to operate our ministries, and also to have an oratory for contemplative prayer. The property committee did an unbelievable amount of work, and I thank them for that. It was incredible. Here's the truth of the matter. We didn't have enough money to do it. It was that simple. And there was not a will in the body to go and to try to raise the money to build the building. It just wasn't there. So we did the prudent thing. We did not build a building that we did not want. We did not build a building that was too small. And we did not build a building that would not stand the test of time. In addition, we did not borrow the funds that would put the church at financial risk. The Center for Ministry continues to be the campus that we have, right? Buildings have their own ministries just as we do. And so we need to continue to invest in them. And that is what we're going to do with the monies from the Empower the Parish campaign. Everybody who's been in the church house knows that the church house needs a lot of work. We need to bring these systems up to speed and up to date. We need a signage program so that you can figure out where the office is. The idea was to put the office where everybody could figure out where it was. We need a signage program inside and out. There are many other projects that we're going to consider. A new floor for Morrill Hall. How about a floor that also is a labyrinth? So when we move things aside, we could turn Morrill Hall into a place of prayer. We need to update our kitchens. We already have a small gift toward that, or a not so small gift toward that. Our narthex bathrooms. Have you ever been to the bathroom down there? Most people like to go in the other building. We need to pave our parking lots. Have you been in those lately? But I've got one for you, and on this is one I want your feedback, okay? Send me an email. Tell me what you think. This is an idea worth pondering. What if next year we had the year of the Reredos, a year dedicated to studying salvation history as it is laid out on the wonderful and beautiful icon before you. But I can tell you, we are all sitting before buried treasure. Our treasure is hidden in plain sight. Take a look at it. There are 184 sculptures, plus the flecks of divine light, plus the large movements of God, as you can see in those gold bars, right? They are all buried in tarnish and dust. When it was originally built, that thing leapt off the screen, right? Imagine that thing glowing to the glory of God, raising our hearts rather than just being a backdrop. It would be an icon of inspiration. The property committee has already done the work to come up with a bid that would cost between $80,000 and $90,000 with scaffolding on both sides. We would refurbish each piece. Some of those pieces have 4 different types of metal on them, and each of those metals needs to be treated in a different way. Years ago when you did it, I remember that from reading the sign up near the balcony, people sort of said, oh, I'll take Peter and James or something like that, or I'll take the aardvark, and contributed money to do that. And while we're at it, how about this? Don't you think it would be a good idea to replace the so-called protective coating that is over the resurrection window? Out front, I call it the shower curtain, right? We have a shower curtain over a religious icon. That plastic is 60 years old. Imagine if you left the plastic cup out for 60 years. It completely obscures the absolutely extraordinary window that is there for us. That would cost $60,000. I'm just saying, Did you know, and some of you were here when it was true, St. Mark's was the Grace Farms in New Canaan for a previous generation. St. Mark's was the destination building that people came to. When we opened it, Duke Ellington came and played a mass that he wrote here on a stage that was built similar to the stage that we use for the Christmas pageant. Perhaps the time has come for us to unleash the treasure and the ministry of the building that is before us. So we are not only a church within walls, we are also a church without walls, right? I see Jesus moving in our media ministry. And when it comes to media ministry, we just all know we are still the early church. We are still trying to figure our way. And that includes for us live streaming of this service, the 9 o'clock in the morning, Father Justin's class, social media, the website, the YouTube channel, and all of our other digital communications. And last year we made great strides. We became more sophisticated at it. We did it for less money. And we had a wonderful creative partnership between Megan Farrell, our Director of Communications, and Jarvis Cromwell, who is seated here, and John Sexton, who's seated over there. These two have great expertise, and they're joining with Megan to lay out a way forward for us. Let me just give you just a few statistics, and I'm going to keep moving here. We have a YouTube channel, right? It's almost impossible to find it on our website, which is, don't tell anybody, not that great. We really need to update our website. But on that YouTube channel, last year, we had 8,000 views, and the amount of time people spent on it increased. More and more people are watching sermons online. They're watching my video log. Wait to hear this for a statistic. Google knows everything about you, and now we even know a little bit about you. 85% of our audience is female. I was like, are you kidding? How do we know that? I didn't get a good answer. Besides, Google knows everything. So, women spend an average of 6 minutes on our site. Pick out in your mind how much time men spend. You ready? 44 seconds. A lot of jokes to be had on that for another time. About 10 people stream us every Sunday, and last Sunday when it was snowy, 21 people streamed this service. We're still the early church. We're still growing, and in the coming year, we want to use our digital media in keeping with our goals of our Spiritual Vitality Initiative. We want to spread our boundaries farther, and we also want to use our media for spiritual growth in people's lives. We want to use it as spiritual practice. And to that end, we're going to be launching stmarks.live, which is a microsite that will be attached to our website. And it's for a more personal experience, right? It's more interactive, it's streamlined, it's easier for your phone. And there we'll have daily meditations, and you can get what you need very quickly without wading through everything. St. John's Gospel ends, incredible gospel, 21 chapters, says at the end, there are also many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. So that's how I feel. There are also many other things that Jesus is doing through the people of St. Mark's. And if every one of them was written down, my talk would never end. But I didn't write it down, so it's done. It's the end. Thanks be to God. Maranatha, peace be with you.